1. They were born here, in a clearing, by the wood that a river cut through, and that's all they knew. There was the long grass that waved when the wind brushed it, the wood that was dark, and hid something high up in its limbs that would hoot sometimes, and the river that ran endlessly along its length, talking all the time and saying nothing. 2. They were different from the land and sky and the hoot things in the wood, and they were different from each other. They had different bodies because she was a girl and he was a boy. Also, they never ate or drank because they weren't really humans. They just looked like them. He was 11 and made of fire. She was 13 and made of water. 3. When fire ran, the flame streaked behind him, and water laughed because she said he looked like a comet. At night he would dance for her. It was quite a show. She sat on a little hill and watched him jump up and down and wave his arms. He looked a bit like a phoenix must, flapping its burning wings, trying desperately not to become the ember it was born to be. In the daytime the sun outshone him, and she could see his features, fine and delicate, his lips thick, and handsome black eyes warbling beneath the heat haze. She had her own tricks to entertain him too. She could climb a tree and then release her shape and waterfall down the trunk into a puddle at the base, quickly gathering her form before the roots could suck her up. Or she could hide in a depression of the earth and go perfectly still so he could look down and see his face on the surface. Her favorite game was to select a pretty flower and feed it a bit of herself every morning until it grew bigger and outshone all the other flowers around it. He, of course, was impressed and went to extra lengths in his nighttime shows of fire acrobatics. 4. He was afraid of rain, but not sure why. When the heavy black clouds came rolling in, she'd run with the boy into the cover of the trees, and they'd sit watching the whole sky weep. The water came down in sheets, and if it touched her toes, she knew immediately. She felt like she grew just a little, and if a raindrop hit him, he sparked a bit, a small pop that made her giggle as he'd shout "ouch" and rub the place. He caught her several times down at the river, where she knelt by the edge and moved her blue fingers through its constant current. She'd pick the water up in her cupped hands, and it would immediately drain through her fingers. She couldn't really even hold the liquid. She was trying to form another person from it, like her. She sat and talked and encouraged it, but it quietly just floated down the stream until it disappeared beyond the next curve. She was not water after all, she thought. She had a mind while the rain that fell from the sky and ran in the river apparently didn't. Fire watched this interaction and was curious. Why would she want someone else anyway? He asked. She couldn't give him an answer, but she looked at the river longingly as it slid quickly away, going, well, someplace she wasn't. 5. There was nothing else to their world, but they didn't know that, because it was the only world they knew. They missed nothing and assumed they had everything. Maybe, though, it was just an experiment long forgotten by the whomever had started it. What the girl longed for, if she had the experience to speak it, is something new. You don't have to be unhappy with what you have to long for something else. But she didn't know that. She just laughed and stomped in the river until the water, which exploded in drops, made the boy pop and scream soft curses at her, before running back to the fields, a slow trail of smoke drifting up in the air as the fields slowly caught fire and extinguished themselves after his passing. 6. One day a terrible storm came upon the land, bigger than anything they'd experienced. The river rose and overflowed the bank. It appeared the whole earth was trying to drown itself. The boy shivered softly with fear. They ran deeper into the woods than they'd ever gone before. He tried to climb a tree to get away from the water, but it turned to ash. She tried to arch herself over him, but she dripped, and his heat hurt her middle. Finally, they came to a cave and hid inside it, and they felt safe. The storm continued for 3 days, the strong winds making the boy flicker. He stayed in the back of the cave to avoid it. She sat in the front, keeping one hand out to catch and absorb the water that she was losing from his heat in the enclosed space. They ducked their heads at the sounds of close thunder, preceded by lightning. They had experienced these before, but not exactly. There was a power here that scared them, and they wondered if the sound and light were people too. Mostly, they just cared about how long it might be until they could go out and play. Well, at least until the woods burst into flames. 7. An enormous lightning strike had ignited it, not just the grass or a tree like before, but all grass and all trees, with great billows of smoke that lifted from the flames and rose into the sky. She wondered if that's where clouds came from. They looked same. The things that lived in the trees hooted loudly, and the limbs shook as they moved invisibly from one tree to the next, trying to escape the fire's wrath. The boy left the cave and endured the soft plink and fizzle of the rain to stand and watch it, his eyes growing wider at the power the forest fire contained. She watched from a distance, seeing the change in him, his face and eyes. He looked different. He looked hungry. The fire tried to eat everything, their whole world it seemed, just like the water had tried to drown it. They were more than just a boy and girl, she thought. They were the destroyers of worlds. 8. They looked at each other, knowing they had to do something. His heat grew more intense the closer the fire came, and she continued to shrink. Finally, she ran from him, out of the cave and into the rain, to gather more water to herself. He looked quizzically at her as her body began to enlarge, bigger and bigger until she was a giant blue girl, hovering high above the forests. Even the tallest tree could only reach her hips. It was easy then. She walked through the trees, and whenever fire touched her, it went out. She wandered around like a girl in a field of flowers, pinching off the orange blooms. She felt the power rise in her, and didn't hate it. She felt she never wanted to be small again, that she could rule the land if she wanted. The power to feed and protect the land and to put out fire. Then she paused, looked down at him, small, warm, burning, and saw the same hunger in his eyes that matched her own. Remembered the nights spent watching him somersault through the fields to make her laugh, and how cold the stars looked when he was absent. She let the water drain from her body and stepped back toward him. The rain ended sooner or later, and they went back to their lives. They laid out in the field at night, him in a warm circle of ash, and her in a little wet puddle, talking about what they had seen and felt and done. He was 14 now, and she was 16. They loved each other. That's what she had been missing, not the someone new she tried to create from the river, but the something new. He loved her too. He burned for her, he said. They laughed. And in their field, under the stars, with the burnt forest already healing, they held each other for the first time and kissed. When they were finished, he had been extinguished, and she had turned to vapor. Love never dies.